Welcome back. This is Bottom Line on Bloomberg Television and streaming on your iPad and on Bloomberg.com. ConnectOne Bank is up over 9% since its IPO last month. The bank raised nearly $45 million in the first initial public offering by a New Jersey-based commercial bank in 10 years. Frank Sorrentino is chairman and CEO of ConnectOne Bank, formerly North Jersey Community Bank. He joins us from the NASDAQ market site where he will ring the closing bell. Frank, welcome back to Bottom Line. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Good to see you, Mark. Good to hear from you.
Frank, did a lot of people in the banking industry think that the market was closed? What makes for a successful IPO in the banking industry?
So, Mark, I think certainly over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even a little bit longer, the markets may have appeared to be closed. Banks did struggle to raise capital, but I think we've demonstrated or may have demonstrated that a bank with a really good business model can certainly tap the public markets and use those public markets to raise capital even in these trying times.
Frank, was this a question of timing? With fewer banks closing, will we see more community and regional banks expanding?
I think you will see possibly some consolidation in the market. You know, we saw that the FDIC put out some news a couple of weeks ago about the third quarter of 2012, where banks have been up dramatically in their earnings, and I think we're going to see that in 2012 as well. So I think the market's healing. I think things are better for community banks in general, and certainly we see a rash of good economic news from the U.S. economy. Maybe not around the world, but clearly here in the U.S. economy.
Frank, are you seeing an improvement in trading multiples for banks?
So trading multiples have increased for banks over probably the last couple of months. I think, there's been this focus over the past number of years on credit concerns, and I think those things have waned somewhat, and people are now more focused on earnings going forward.
Well, you had 9 private capital raises prior to the IPO. How were you able to attract quality capital in this environment?
So again, Mark, I think, when you look at our business plan, we've talked on your show a number of times before, we've had consecutive growth. We've had good quality growth, solid growth. We've taken market share away from some of the larger institutions that really didn't service the market well. We've been able to do that very effectively. I think you see in our name change a focus on where the customer and how the customer wants a bank today, us connecting with our customer through technological means as opposed to just, through brick and mortar. I think the entire industry is just changing dramatically. I think we've been able to capitalize on that, and I think, the investors today, particularly the institutional investors, have validated that model.
I'm speaking with Frank Sorrentino, the chairman and CEO of ConnectOne Bank. Frank, earlier this month, most of the nation's largest banks passed their annual stress test. But are the hypotheticals, that 13% unemployment rate, the 21% drop in housing prices, are they too extreme? Do they overstate risk?
So I think if you're going to do a stress test, you certainly want to exaggerate what the risk really is. But then I think when we actually apply it to whether these banks are well capitalized or not, I think the application of the stress test needs to be looked at a little bit more closely. Even in the depth of the recession / what some would have called depression, we didn't have 13 or 14% unemployment.
Right.
And we didn't have the housing market drop 50 or 60%. So I think it may be a little bit over the top, but I guess that's why it's called a stress test.
Frank, well, what issues aren't addressed in the stress test?
I'm not sure that clearly the stress tests are, at the largest of the institutions, but I'm not really sure that it's looking for what kind of diversity those companies have in their business models, which parts of those models would be stressed in varying types of the economy, and how it affects the entire banking industry itself.
Frank, we have about a minute left. Are banks still intimidated by the regulatory environment? Is that why some aren't making business moves right now?
Mark, I think we've demonstrated, I've heard lots of bankers complain about the regulatory environment, and yes, it is becoming, I don't want to call it more onerous, but there's more regulatory pressure on banks today. But it's part of the business. It's part of what you have to do to run a bank today. I think we've demonstrated that we're able to actually not only operate in that environment, but do it profitably and continue to grow. And so I think it's just, it's part of how the business operates.
Is this now a new paradigm where you play the hand you're dealt?
I don't think it's a new paradigm. I think for as long as there's been banking in the United States, there's been more regulation. I can't remember of too many years where there's been less. So I don't think it's a new paradigm. I think it is the paradigm that we operate in.
Frank Sorrentino, Chairman and CEO of ConnectOne Bank, joining us from the NASDAQ market site where he will be ringing the closing bell today. Frank, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. And ConnectOne Bank is excited to be here today.
Thank you, sir. Up next, we'll look at how the budget impasse in Washington's hurting the country's oldest national park and the people whose livelihoods depend on it.
How can you turn all those days on the road into a vacation faster? With the Citi Hilton Honors Reserve Visa Signature Card. Become a card member and you can earn 2 weekend nights at over 3,800 hotels and resorts within the Hilton Honors portfolio. Plus, earn 10 bonus points for every dollar spent on stays within the Hilton Honors portfolio. 5 bonus points on eligible travel purchases. And 3 bonus points on your everyday purchases. All so you can get to the places you want. To spend time with the people you love. The Citi Hilton Honors Reserve Visa Signature Card. To apply, call 800-326-3657 or go to citi.com/reserve. Earn 2 weekend nights and earn bonus points fast. Call 800-326-3657 today or go to citi.com/reserve.
The nurse said, Bruce, we found cancer.
We knew we could get more advanced treatment at Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
You sit in one room the entire time.